The hour of 7 p.m. having arrived, I'll call to order this regular meeting of Keene City Council. This meeting is being broadcasted live on the City of Keene's YouTube channel. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted to the website by the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. If you'd like to receive an electronic City Council packet to reference while viewing future broadcasts, please contact the City Clerk's office during regular business hours or go to the city's website and subscribe to the city email list. The agenda is also accessible from any mobile device. I'd ask that the clerk please call the roll.
Brian J. Lake.
Here.
Michael J. Remy.
Here.
Gladys Johnson. Here. Michael Giacomo.
Here.
Randy L. Filio.
Here.
Robert C. Williams.
Here.
Philip M. Jones.
Here.
Andrew M. Madison.
Here.
Chris C. Roberts.
Here.
Bettina A. Chadbourne.
Here.
Catherine I. Workman.
Here.
Mitchell H. Greenwald. Kate M. Bosley.
Here.
Thomas F. Powers.
Here.
Thank you. It's my understanding that Councilor Ormerod is participating remotely. Councilor Ormerod, if you can hear us, please state your name, the reason for participating remotely, and whether or not anyone is in the room with you.
Councilor Ormerod, I'm in this room alone, and I'm in quarantine.
All right. Thank you very much, Councilor. Councilor Johnson, would you please lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
For all.
All right. So at this time, I would ask that Sofia Cuna Vasconcelos, she is the chair of the Human Rights Committee, and Andy Bohannon, please come up to accept the Juneteenth proclamation. Okay, so whereas Juneteenth commemorates the day of June 19th, 1865, when enslaved African Americans in Texas were informed by a general of the Union Army that they were free, in accordance with the abolition of slavery as set forth in the Emancipation Proclamation of January 1st, 1863. And whereas since its first observance in 1866, the anniversary of this event has been celebrated by America's black community as an occasion to recognize the end of 246 years of chattel slavery on this continent. And whereas the state of New Hampshire, as well as 45 other states and the District of Columbia, now officially recognizes Juneteenth as a holiday observance. And whereas recent events in our country, including peaceful protests in Keene, have underscored the need for our community to do better in recognizing and supporting those among us who are members of minority groups, and to work harder to be a welcoming and inclusive city. And whereas Juneteenth is an opportunity to celebrate African American culture, achievement, and freedom, while educating people of all races about how the legacy of slavery continues in our society. Therefore, be it resolved that I, George S. Hansel, Mayor of the City of Keene, do hereby proclaim the week of June 18th and 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth in the City of Keene, and recognize its historic importance and encourage all residents to join us in its celebration. In witness whereof, I herein do set my hand in the official seal of the City of Keene, the 16th day of June, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you all, and I would ask that you consider joining us on Saturday at 11 a.m. The Human Rights Committee has put together an event, it'll be 3 hours in duration with truly wonderful speakers and musicians to learn more about this holiday and to bring the community together in recognizing and celebrating it. Thank you.
And that brings us to our Next item on the regular agenda, the minutes from our previous meeting. I'm looking to Counselor Powers for a motion. Counselor Bosley for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would move to accept the minutes of 6/2/22 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Bosley. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filia?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Omeriad?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And it is unanimous, which brings us to our public hearing. And I'd ask the clerk to please read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held before the Keene City Council relative to a petition from the City of Keene Community Development Department to amend sections of Chapter 100, the Land Development Code of the City Code of Ordinances, to add dwelling, multifamily, as a permitted principal use with limitations to the Commerce District, amend the height requirements in the Commerce District to allow for additional stories or heights up to 4 stories or 56 feet, provided that the additional building setback or building height setback requirements are met, and amend the use standards for multifamily in Section 8.3.1.c of Article 8 to require multifamily dwelling units in the downtown core, downtown growth, and commerce districts to be located above the ground floor. Per order of the mayor and councilors of the City of Keene, this 19th day of May, 2022.
Thank you very much. So this is a public hearing. It's the opportunity for the public to weigh in on these potential zoning ordinance changes, and it is affecting the Commerce District. I'd invite Mary Brunner, our senior planner, to give us a brief presentation on these changes.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Mary Brenner, Senior Planner for the Community Development Department, the petitioner for this application. So this ordinance proposes to amend several provisions of the Land Development Code, which is Chapter 100 of City Code, in order to create opportunity for housing development in our downtown and commerce and commercial areas of the city that is consistent with the prevailing scale and built form of the surrounding area. This ordinance went to City Council for a first reading on April 21st and was referred to the Joint Committee of the Planning Board and Planning Licenses and Development Committee. A public workshop was held on May 9. During the public comment of the portion of the public workshop, there were no comments from the public. However, there was some discussion at the board level talking about some of the provisions. I think most of the discussion was really around the height step back requirement, which I can talk about in just a moment. But ultimately, at the conclusion of the public workshop, the planning board voted to find that the ordinance is consistent with the community master plan, and the PLD committee voted to request that the mayor set a public hearing. So that's where we are tonight at the public hearing. And so, as I mentioned, the petitioner for this application is the Community Development Department, and staff really views this proposal as an extension of the Land Development Code project. If you'll recall, the Land Development Code was a pretty long, massive, multi-year effort, but with respect to zoning, it was mostly just a reorganization of information. We did do some significant changes to the zoning within the downtown, but all of the zoning districts outside the downtown remained mostly untouched. So what staff have been doing is we've been going through the zoning districts outside of the downtown to identify opportunities to reduce barriers to housing development and ways to promote other community goals in our master plan. So currently within the Commerce District, there are no residential uses that are allowed, and staff are proposing to add multifamily dwelling as a permitted use, with the limitation that dwelling units couldn't be located on the ground floor. They'd have to be located above the first floor. And really the reason for the limitation in this instance is to ensure that we're preserving the intent of this district. The intent of the Commerce District is to provide for an area of intense commercial development. So while staff felt that this could be a good opportunity for live-work type developments or a mixed use type development, we wanted to make sure that we weren't inadvertently allowing for a bunch of land in the Commerce District to get developed solely as housing. We wanted to make sure it was a mixed use scenario. So that's really the reason for the limitation that we're proposing to have the dwelling units be located above the ground floor. With respect to height, building heights within the Commerce District are currently maxed at 2 stories or 35 feet by right. And then if you want to go up higher, you can go up to 3.5 stories or 50 feet with a special exception, which requires a trip to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Staff are proposing to remove the requirement to get a special exception in order to increase the height. And instead, we're proposing to allow the height to be able to be increased to 4 stories or 56 feet by right, provided that additional building setback requirements are met or building height step back requirements. So a setback, I'm sure most of you are familiar with that, but that's where you're required to have the building be at least a certain distance from the property line. I believe right now in the Commerce District, the setback is 20 feet. If you wanted to go up to 3 stories, you'd have to set back your building 30 feet. If you want to go up to 4 stories, you have to set back your building 40 feet under this proposal. The building height step back is where you have the actual facade of the building above a certain point is recessed back from the front of the building in order to bring the massing of the building back away from the street. So you can go with either option. The developer would be able to choose. You don't have to do both. You could do either the setback or the building height step back. So I just wanted to clarify that. In addition to the changes that staff are proposing to the Commerce District, we're proposing a change that would affect both the downtown growth and the downtown core district. A major component of both of these districts, which are really the heart of our downtown Keene, is the emphasis on pedestrian scale development and having an active streetscape and walkability. So currently, multifamily residential uses are allowed in both of these districts by right. However, in the downtown core district, all dwelling units have to be located above the ground floor if there are fewer than 4 units in one structure. So basically, if you have a single, 2, or 3 unit building, the dwelling units have to be located above the ground floor currently. So staff are proposing to change this so that multifamily residential development in the downtown can only occur by right on the upper stories of the building. And the intent of that change is to ensure that we're promoting ground level uses in the heart of our downtown Keene that are appropriate for downtown areas with a high level of pedestrian traffic. So I think that's, with that, I'll just take questions, and I'm happy to provide more details if folks are interested.
Any questions from the council? Councilor Jones?
Thank you, Your Honor. More of a statement, because this is more for the public tonight and not to hear from the councilors. But I will not be here on July 13th when it goes to PLD, so I'm going to throw out my 2 cents now. I think this is very good. When we did the land development code, we told you there were going to be amendments coming, and this is just one of them that makes it better. Everybody knows the housing crunch. This helps the housing crunch. Everyone's heard me talk about smart growth principles. In the past, this fits in with smart growth principles. And the fact that we're taking away some of the bureaucratic red tape, I think makes this a positive thing. So I'm looking forward to it. And I'm sorry I can't be there July 13th.
Thank you. Glad you could have your comments on the record now. Anybody else have questions or comments at this time? Councilor Williams?
Well, just to say, I very much like this idea. We definitely need more density in this town, more places for people to live. There's not enough housing. We need to build more housing, so it brings down the price. I'm a little concerned about the exclusion of ground floor housing in commercial districts, just because ground floor housing is very useful for disability access. It's very much easier to get a wheelchair in on the ground floor than to have an elevator installed. So I might ask you to consider some kind of exception around ground floor housing for disability access.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments? All right, thank you, Mary. At this time, we'll open up the public hearing for the public comment portion. If you would like to comment on the proposed changes, please approach the microphone here, state your name and your address for the minute taker. Anybody?
Hi, I'm Dan Bartlett. I'm an architect in Keene. 185 Winchester Street is my office. I also live in Keene. I want to speak in favor of this proposal as well, just mirroring what has been said already in terms of the need for housing. I had a client approach me with a proposal to do just this very thing, retail on the first floor, residential on the second floor. His property is in the commerce zone, so that the project didn't move forward at the time, but I got so interested in the project, or in the prospect of having this, that I started to put together a team to go ahead and propose this change anyway, but the city beat me to it, which is great, because my client didn't have to pay. But it's, you know, so I think we're going to see, I think what's important is how Main Streets have always developed, which is this retail, this vibrant life, 24, well, for great parts of the day, and then at night they're residential, so that the city has this real vibrancy. And so I just wanted to speak in favor of it and hope that this process can move forward favorably. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you. Sir, may I ask you a question, please?
This is not really a time for that. If we can just get the public comments, and then maybe at the committee meeting, we can have that further discussion. Thank you, though. So save it. We'll get to it. Any other public comments?
My name is Peter SPFs, and I live at 29 Middle Street. It's just about a block and a half away from Central Square. And I live in a historic, what they call a historic district. I don't know if my district, or my street is going to be directly affected, but it looks like it's in the plans at some point that you can expand into that area. I have no objections to that, but I think what you're doing is good. You're looking out for the city's interests for the long term. And I've been here a long time, and I'm going to be history pretty soon. So I'm not too concerned about myself, but I'm wondering about what you're going to do with the historic district concept. Now, you've enumerated various structures in this area where I live as historic. So there'll have to be some backing off, or there'll have to be some amendment of what you propose to do and what is allowed in those areas. Otherwise, I really don't have anything else to say. I'm just saying, be careful about the historic concept. You started it, don't harm it. Try to be careful about it, and I wish you lots of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. SPFs. Any further public comments? All right. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment portion of the hearing. Public comments in writing will be accepted up until 1 p.m. on Tuesday, July 12th. Written comments must be signed and submitted to the city clerk by that date and time to be included in the record. And the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee will be taking up these proposed changes and making a recommendation to the council, which will be at our regular July 12th meeting, I believe. Okay. Which brings us to communications, number 1.
This evening, we have a communication from attorney Michael Bentley. He's representing his client, an Agatha Fifield. And she is requesting that the city resume maintenance of Blaine Street, which is a street that she lives on. She thought that it was a public way when she purchased the property, only to find out from the Public Works Department that it's a private way.
This will be referred to the Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee, number 2.
Communication from attorney Thomas Hanna. He's representing JRR Properties, and they wish to make a donation of 2.5 acres of property that was originally the overflow parking lot for the Colony Mill to be used by the city as park space.
And this be referred to the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee. Number 3.
Communication from the Keene Housing Kids Collaborative Board members relative to their funding allocation in the proposed operating budget.
And this will be accepted and filed into the record. Number 4.
As required by the council's rules of order, Councilor Madison has put on record his intent to make 2 motions relative to the operating budget, one relative to the Keene Housing Kids Collaborative and the other relative to the Conservation Commission.
And this will also be accepted and filed into the record. Number 5.
Also in compliance with the council's rules of order, a communication from Councilors Bosley and Williams. They too are proposing amendments to the operating budget. Again, Keene Housing Kids Collaborative is the focus of one of their amendments, and the Good Samaritans is the other focus.
This communication will also be accepted and filed into the record. Number 6.
This is a communication from a Fabian Friedland. He's representing Keene Island Condo Association as well as Keene Island Holdings, looking for a lease of city property located just north of 69 Island Street for parking for the Corning business.
And this will be referred to the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee. Number 7.
And our last communication for the evening is from Councilor Jones. He's speaking about unsafe sign placements in the city.
And this will be referred to the Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee, which brings us to committee reports. Number 1.
And Planning Licenses and Development Committee report relative to the Keene Music Festival. On a roll call vote, 5-0, the Planning Licenses and Development Committee recommends the Keene Music Festival be granted a street fair license to use downtown city rights-of-way for purposes of conducting merchant sidewalk sales, as well as use of downtown city property on Central Square, Railroad Square, designated parking spaces on Main Street to conduct the Keene Music Festival on Saturday, September 3rd from 9 to 10:30 p.m. In addition, the applicant is permitted to close off a portion of Railroad Street from Main Street to the westerly entrance to the Wells Street parking garage and a portion of Church Street from Main Street to the entrance of the Selman Company parking lot. This permission is granted subject to the following conditions: the signing of a revocable license and identification agreement, the provision of a certificate of liability insurance with the city of Keene listed as an additional insured, amount of $1 million, submittal of a signed letter of permission from City Tire for use of their property, compliance with any recommendations of staff. In addition, the petitioner is granted use of the requested parking spaces free of charge under the provisions of the free parking policy. The petitioner agrees to absorb the cost of any city services over and above any amount of city funding allocated in the FY23 community events budget. Said payment shall be made within 30 days of the date of invoicing.
And I'm looking to Councilor Bosley for a motion. Councilor Giacomo for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
And we have a motion from Councilor Bosley, seconded by Councilor Giacomo. Councilor Bosley.
Thank you again. So this is the annual license request for the music festival that's going to happen on September 3rd. They're expecting to have 6 stages at Railroad Square, City Tire, Toadstool, Central Square, the Monadnock Food Co-op, and Lindy's Diner. There are 2 potential street closures. When we spoke to the petitioner, they may not need to close those 2 roads, but they want to have the barricades available just in case, depending on the patronage of the festival. And the committee was happy to have this request come back before us, and we hope you guys will see the value and support it too.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilor Lake?
Yes.
Councilor Remy?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilor Giacomo?
Yes.
Councilor Filia?
Yes.
Councilor Williams?
Yes.
Councilor Jones?
Yes.
Councilor Madison?
Yes.
Councilor Roberts?
Yes.
Councilor Ormerod?
Yes.
Councilor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Councilor Workman?
Yes.
Councilor Bosley?
Yes.
Councilor Powers?
Yes.
And it's unanimous. Number 2.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to a engineering change order for the wastewater treatment plant laboratory renovation project. On a vote of 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to execute change order number 3 with Underwood Engineers to perform engineering services for the laboratory renovation project for an amount not to exceed $4,000 for contract number 04-21-22.
Council Powers for a motion, Council Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Powers, seconded by Councilor Remy. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. As we all know, the project at the water treatment plant continues, particularly in the laboratory area. And it's to really bring that particular area within the plant up to speed, current standards, and to make the equipment much more accessible to those that have to work there. During the recent section of the project, when they bore through a particular area to do some exhaust work, they found that there's some structural items in the way. So it has to be a little bit redesigned, a little bit changed to it, and it requires some more work on the part of the engineers, and then the required mechanical work will be done once the engineer designs a project. So it's going to require an additional $4,000, and we would like to have a change order authorized for the city manager with the Underwood Engineering, not to exceed $4,000, and that money is within the project budget. Unanimously approved by the FOP. We'd like the city council to do the same. Thank you.
Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts? Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne? Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley? Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And it is unanimous. Number 3.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to acceptance of the American Rescue Plan Act funds and contract services to perform a sludge dryer feasibility study. On a vote of 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to accept and execute an American Rescue Plan Act grant from the New Hampshire DES in the amount of $100,000 for the sludge dryer feasibility study. Further, on a vote of 5-0, the FOP committee recommends the manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a professional services contract with Brown and Caldwell to perform a sludge dryer feasibility study for an amount not to exceed $99,400. If a contract cannot be negotiated, the manager is authorized to negotiate with the next ranked firm.
I'm looking at Council Powers for a motion. Council Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Make a motion to carry out the intent of both recommendations in the committee report.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilor Powers, seconded by Councilor Remy. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. We were fortunate to get some money under the ARPA program that has some money coming towards communities in this state and actually in other communities. And it's an opportune time because, as you well know, Public Works Department works constantly at ways to reduce our costs. And this is very opportune given the fact that we've seen some news in the last few days of what our utility costs are going to be, our electric costs. This might sound like a different way of doing business, but actually when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. We have the sludge, the waste that's down there after they go through various parts of how it makes its way down there. It's dewatered and then it's hauled away to a landfill. That's a sizable amount of money. It's a sizable project almost on a daily basis. Looking at this possibility that they could do some more drying and reduce what the volume and the liquid part of it at the plant just makes a lot of sense. It'll certainly reduce the number of trips that are taken off to wherever the landfill, whether or not this landfill we're using now is going to last forever, it's unlikely. So this would be a great move. It's not being done in too many places, but there are places that have worked towards it. The firm that they're looking to hire has some experience, and it makes sense for us to use this money that's come to us in this fashion to come up with a plan and to decide if in fact that needs to be done and can be done to the advantage of the city. If that's the case, it'll come back to the city council or for some action in the future. Finance Committee recommended unanimously, and we'd like you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Omerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
It's unanimous. Number 4.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to a sole source approval for a sludge pump replacement at the wastewater treatment plant. On a vote of 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to sole source CPICs for the sludge pump replacement project at the wastewater treatment plant.
I'm looking at Counselor Powers for a motion. Counselor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second. We have a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. Still down at the water treatment plant, and as part of the projects going on, the pumps that are currently being used in the wastewater treatment plant in the sludge area need to be replaced. So the city staff went through a proposal and a project to evaluate various options that are available to us to do this project. And there were 3 firms that proposed different ways to address it. And after review by the staff and the engineer, they have selected a firm to be able to do this for us at a what I thought to be very reasonable price. So they'll replace all the pumps, and there'll be standby systems available should one particular pump go down while it's still in operation. There's enough redundancy, this would never be a major problem. And these will serve us until some decision is made in the future as to whether or not it'll be treated in a different fashion. So I'm missing a part of that I wanted to say, but at any rate, these pumps are being provided at what I think to be a very reasonable price. It appears that it meets the criteria to be sole source by our city code, but after the extensive amount of work that's been done by the staff and a little bit of a discussion amongst the committee members, we feel it's really not sole source. They've done more review of this than is normally done on a bid process. So we recommended unanimously that this project be approved, and we hope that the city council will do the same.
Any comments or questions? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Omerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And it is unanimous. Number 5.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to a utility reimbursement agreement with Liberties Utilities. On a vote of 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a project reimbursement agreement with Liberty Utilities related to the Winchester Street reconstruction project. Further, on a vote of 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a design change order with McFarland Johnson in the amount of not to exceed $25,000, subject to the execution of a project reimbursement agreement.
And I'm looking at Counselor Powers once again. Counselor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to carry out the intent of both recommendations in the committee report.
Second. And we have a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a little bit of an extra project going along with our construction down on Winchester Street that you're going to be able to enjoy for the next couple of years. This is an agreement we're going to work out with Liberty Utilities that wants to do some pre-work as the second part of this project gets going over Island Street and the bridge. And they would like to be able to hang the gas utility on the side of the new bridge that's going to go in. It's a common practice that's done. We, in fact, will be hanging our water and sewer utilities in that same area, and probably there'll be some electrical stuff there. But at any rate, this project needs to move forward and have some idea what's going on. It was not in our project, so they're agreeing, if the city council passes this, to negotiate a contract with the city manager and to pay the expenses of our firm McFarland Johnson to engineer and work through all the particular needs and put together a plan for them to be able to use in the future when it's time to do that, and we will be reimbursed for the cost. And so it's a two-part motion here, that one is to be able to have the agreement, and the second is that to have the agreement with McFarland Johnson for $25,000. Finance Committee recommends that this be passed by the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley? Counselor Powers?
Yes.
It is unanimous. Number 6.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to a construction change order for the 2022 sewer main lining contract. On a vote of 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the manager be authorized to do all things necessary to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a construction change order with Institute Form Technologies in an amount not to exceed $57,393 with funding provided by Project Code Cost Center 08066.
Thank you. Counselor Powers for a motion, Counselor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
We have a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're back to the sewer business here. And this is an annual project that the Public Works Department does by lining the existing pipes that are still in good shape, and this will really extend the ability of them to serve us into the future. So, working through various areas of the city, putting it out to bid on an annual basis. They've made estimates on what they feel is the amount necessary to get the job done in terms of the area that they want to address in this particular year coming up. And this year, we're lucky enough that the project was bid by a reliable firm that they have a good understanding of at less than we estimated. So it allows us to have a little bit of money available to do a little more work, but we have to have the right contract going here. The contract will allow another 523 feet to be done this year. They're here, they're mobilized, they know what they're doing, they can get it done, and we'll still be within our budget. I'm almost wondering if we can't negotiate a little better and go another couple hundred feet, but understanding how businesses operate, they're committed, they're willing to do it. Committee recommends unanimously that it be done, and I hope the City Council will do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion, comments, questions? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts? Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And it is unanimous. Number 7.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, as well as an opportunity to borrow and accept grants. On a vote of 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the manager be authorized to do all things necessary to apply for, accept, and execute loan agreements with an NHDES Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds for the following projects. For the Main Street Flood Management Project, $951,000. For the Drainage Lining Program, $920,800. For the Main Street Sewer Rehab Program, $710,500. For the Sewer Manhole Lining, $1,083,600. And lastly, for the Sewer Repair and Lining Project, $1,081,395. Further, on a vote of 5-0, the FOP Committee recommends the manager be authorized to do all things necessary to accept and execute any and all American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, grants offered by the NHDES for cities' capital improvement program projects.
Thank you very much. Counselor Powers for motion, Counselor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, this is a item where I ask you to carry out the intent of both recommendations in the committee report.
Second.
We have a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. two parts of this, both of them very attractive to the city of Keene, whereby we're going to try to have the council authorize the manager to do all the things necessary to apply, accept, and execute loan agreements with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. They provide a program that will loan us money at a very attractive rate, and also, if it's in certain criterias, there's some forgiveness to these kinds of loans that are pretty important to us as the price of trying to do business keeps going up, and the needs we have continue to go up to give us good water and good programs out here. So that's phase one, where we would work through the state on that. And the second part of it, as we're going through this, if the state is able to provide us, and we hope they are, some more ARPA grant monies, and again, that'll be offered through the Department of Environmental Services to the city of Keene, and that will cover the capital city improvement projects that have been listed. Excellent, absolutely some of the best programs going, and it's the best way for us to get these done rather than be putting on the tax rate. So Finance Committee recommended unanimously, and I hope you do the same.
Thank you very much. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none. Are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Omeriad?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And that is unanimous. City Manager.
Thank you. This week, we hosted SBDC as part of their Resiliency Academy. The Resiliency Academy is a 3-session academy hosted by the New Hampshire SBDC and UNH Cooperative Extension. The academy this year included in-person tours of 3 New Hampshire communities. They visited these communities to highlight and celebrate what each community has done to make their community more resilient and vibrant. The 3 communities that were chosen were Littleton, Somersworth, and Keene. And I want to thank Med Kopczynski, Andy Bohannon, Alec Doyle from the Colonial, the Executive Director at the Colonial, Sarah Powell, the Program Director at Hannah Grimes, Peter Panessa from Signworks and the Wall Dogs Projects, all for helping us host this group. It was a large group. We had a 2-hour tour, and we talked about several projects in the city, and the group was from all over New Hampshire, some from municipalities and some from small businesses, and so it was a really nice opportunity to highlight the good work that's happening here in the city. I want to also share with you that it will be necessary to temporarily suspend our online tax payments. So if you go to our website right now, you can use your credit card to pay for your property taxes. We will need to suspend that for a short period of time. The first step in the transition to the new Tyler Tech software program for property taxes was the preparing and mailing of preliminary property tax bills, and that happened. So last Friday, those bills went out, and there's been some quirks that we're still working through. We've gotten some questions, but that was the first step in converting over to the new system for taxes. To the next step is in the process is to migrate our online payments over to the Tyler Tech credit card processing service. So in order for us to be able to do that, we will need to temporarily suspend the online tax payments. However, people can still come in and pay their taxes with a credit card. We can do that at the counter. And this will not impact other online payments. We have water sewer that you can pay online. Those are not currently being impacted because if you remember in the overall financial software transition plan, that comes later. So we're in taxes right now. We expect that the portal will be back up again on June 24th. However, we'll keep everyone updated on the city's website. I also wanted to just provide you an update. I got an email today regarding congressionally directed funding requests. 2 projects that the city submitted to Senator Shaheen's office are advancing to the next step. That's just first step. We submitted 5 or 6 to the Shaheen's office. 2 are moving forward. The Heritage Trail Project, $1.9 million, and the design dollars for the multi-use parking facility on Gilboa Ave, $1.2 million. So I'm hoping those projects will make it all the way, and we will be successful. I also want to thank, another round of thanks, the library and Beth Fox and Mary Bruner, Med Kopczynski again, and Andy Bohannon and Court Blomquist. We've had the New Hampshire Managers Group here since yesterday. There's about 40 managers here, so you see them walking around. Today they did this afternoon a Wall Dogs tour. And they're here tomorrow until noon, and this group really helped me organize and set up for them, and the mayor was there this morning to do a formal welcome to the city of Keene. So I really appreciate all the help everyone has given. They felt very welcomed, and that's it for me.
Great, thank you. So that brings us to city officer and department reports, number 1.
This is the annual warrant for unlicensed dog. There's a little twist this year. So in addition to giving you a warrant of 442 dog owners with 565 dogs that have not renewed their dog license, we're now picking up people that have not responded to our periodic notices about dogs recently receiving rabies, because the vets are required to notify us when they give a rabies shot. We're obligated to notify dog owners to come in and see us, but 276 owners didn't want to do that. And so we pulled them into the warrant process, and that is 276 owners with 321 dogs. So we have quite a bit of unlicensed dogs this year, but we'll go through the process and hope that by the end of it all, we're down to a few dozen.
Okay.
Woof.
So this will be referred to the Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee. That brings us to ordinances for a second reading. Number 1.
Planning Licenses and Development Committee report relative to a zone change proposal on 19 Whitcomb's Mill Road. It's from, the petitioner was James Fifford. The PLD committee is recommending adoption of the ordinance, and it is Ordinance O 2022-02, an ordinance relating to amending the zoning map to change the zoning designation at 17 Whitcomb's Mill Road from rural and agricultural to low-density 1.
We'll file the report. I'm looking at Councilor Bosley for a motion, please. Councilor Giacomo for a second.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to adopt ordinance O-2022-02.
Second.
We have motion from Councilor Bosley, seconded by Councilor Giacomo. Councilor Bosley.
Thank you again. So this ordinance is in regards to a 12-acre parcel of land located on Whitcomb's Mill Road. The applicant had requested that the underlying zoning be changed from rural with a small corner of agricultural to LD1. And for those of you that didn't sit through all the joint committee meetings, the LD1 is a zoning designation that the city uses when there's only access to city sewer on property and not city water. The property has a utility easement via the Langdon Place of Keene lot so that they can access city sewer, which allows them to be eligible for LD1. The change will restrict the number of uses on the lot to single-family homes and group homes with the CUP. And the lot sizes would also change from a 5-acre lot to a 1-acre lot because there would not be an expectation that they would need to have septic systems with access to that city sewer. We felt that this was a reasonable request due to the circumstances on the lot and also could move us in the direction of creating some more opportunity for some additional housing. So we hope the council agrees.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
That's unanimous. So we're going to table J2 until after the budget is adopted, which brings us to J3.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to Ordinance O 2022-06. The committee is recommending the adoption of the ordinance, and the ordinance reads O 2022-06, an ordinance relating to personnel systems and procedures.
All right, thank you. Councilor Powers for a motion. Councilor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
We have a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. This action is a couple of minor changes within the ordinance that has to do with personnel. And it actually creates an allowance for the Assistant Emergency Management Director, and it also changes the way those that what call in military additional duty functions. In the military, we never got paid for it, did we, Cord? No. So there's a generous amount coming with these. It'll be paid when your payroll processes every week versus get paid at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year. So it just makes, it's some technical changes, makes a lot of good sense to do. So the ordinance has been changed in those two particular areas. Committee recommended that this be passed, and we asked the council to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And that is unanimous, which brings us to number 4.
Planning Licenses and Development Committee Report relative to Ordinance O 2022-07A. The committee is recommending the adoption of the ordinance, and it is Ordinance O 2022-07A, an ordinance relating to parklets.
And I'm looking to file a report, and Counselor Bosley for a motion. Counselor Giacomo for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to adopt ordinance O-2022-07-A with an effective date of July 1st.
Second.
We have a motion from Counselor Bosley, seconded by Counselor Giacomo. Counselor Bosley.
Thank you again. So the committee has been looking at this topic for well over a year now, but it's recently come to the council's attention that the state has given us some authority to move forward, which is why we've crafted the language that we put before you tonight. The highlights that I would like to point out are that there are only a limited number of streets that meet the requirement for consideration for parklets. These streets all have parallel parking spots and are off from Main Street. We edited the language last week that refers to the maximum of 3 spaces. We decided, after a lot of deliberation as a committee, that the intent of these parklets is to be placed in front of establishments that they serve. So we made the change that all of the spaces have to be contiguous with the establishment that they would be licensed for. So some restrictions are noted, like drainage and hydrants and fire egress, and each parklet must also adhere to design guidelines that the Public Works is creating for safety and functionality. The committee as a whole felt that we wanted to support opportunities in our downtown to be vibrant, and people enjoy the safety, energy, and atmosphere of dining outside. So we unanimously voted to move this forward, and we hope that you guys will all support this as well.
Okay, any discussion? Counselor Jones.
Thank you, Your Honor. This had the potential to go off in a million different tangents, and I want to thank Counselor Bosley for keeping it in focus. There were some very good discussions with this. Just so the council is clear, this is only for entities that serve alcohol. That's not our ordinance. That came from the state. So I know you're going to get questions on that. So you get somebody like Kristen's Bakery saying, "Why can't I do it?" That's why. Just so you know. When you do new things like this, and I'm going to repeat what I said at the committee meeting, there's some bit of reluctance because we're making a big change here. But I just want to remind everybody the same thing I said there. Remember, it's seasonable, it's revocable, and it's amendable. So it's worth the try to see if it works for our city.
Thank you. Further comments? I would just say, again, thank you to Chair Bosley. I would repeat what Councilor Jones said, and the entire council and the staff. Who would have thought that putting some chairs and tables in the street would be such a big, difficult thing to accomplish? But I think you've all come up with a good solution here that'll hopefully help the businesses and help drive downtown Keene's vibrancy. Councilor Giacomo?
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple other highlights. Councilor Bosley pointed out some of the real important ones here. Really wanted to emphasize that what this ordinance is doing is allowing the idea to go forward of a parklet. There is still going to be a review of any application for a parklet. Each specific instance would then have to be reviewed by Public Works before anything can actually be constructed. So this will take into account things like fire escapes. It'll take into account any kind of design considerations surrounding what is it built out of, and again, some of the buffer zones that are required on either end of them. So all of those details are not contained in the ordinance. The ordinance does contain things like can't block fire hydrants, can't block drainage, but the actual specifics are not contained in here. So that way, if there is something that comes across that is a little squirrely looking, the city, through the application process, can still say, you need to fix that. So that, just as a heads up for that, if you haven't read the full ordinance yet, all the changes, that's a kind of high-level review of some of the important stuff that came up during our PLD meeting.
Thank you. Further comments? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts? Counselor Omerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And that is unanimous, which brings us to the big one for the night, resolutions number 1.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee relative to the fiscal year operating budget. The committee is recommending Resolution R2209 as amended to include an additional $5,000 to the Senior Citizen Center to reflect a level funded allocation of $15,000 and to include an allocation of $10,000 to the Monadnock Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Coalition, with a disbursement of funds contingent upon further approval by the council of the coalition's plans for operations once finalized. And that brings us to a version of the resolution, Resolution R2209A, a resolution relating to the 2022-2023 fiscal year budget.
And we'll file the report. I'm looking at Counselor Powers for a motion. Counselor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would move for the resolution, for Resolution 2022-09-A.
Second.
We have a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. A lot of work went into that product, and it's a lot more than just these 2 pages, believe me, as you all know. This project starts about August, mid-August, works its way through to this week every year. And that's, in my opinion, it's become much more difficult every single year to get to that point, to present to you as a city council and to the citizens of the community a budget that is reasonable, but yet provides the services necessary to make life good in this community. Pretty nice to hear that we've had a couple of groups here this week. They're finding out again what a great place to be, but we got to be able to provide them the best services going. And this budget does that. You know, you pass your judgment on that. The Finance Committee unanimously recommended that this be passed. I'd ask you to do the same. I know there wants to be some discussion a little bit about some more, but know that this product is a fine budget. It'll do the best job we can, but be prepared for next year. It's going to be very difficult, given the finances of this country, to get us to that point. But if we continue to go at it with the idea that we've got to provide the best services, I think we can make it. Thanks for everybody's work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for running those meetings and doing a great job. So at this time, I would offer the opportunity for councilors to make amendments. A quick reminder, though, any amendments would needed to be submitted in writing according to the rules. So would anybody like to offer up an amendment? Councilor Madison.
So I'll go first. I know that 2 other councilors had proposed an amendment similar to mine, so I'll start with the one I propose solely, which is to add $500 to the Conservation Commission's budget. This money would be used for further education and outreach events. In the last year or so, the Conservation Commission has been...
Well, very quickly, let me just get a second for the
Oh,
motion.
sorry.
We have a motion from Councilor Madison, seconded by Councilor Filio. Councilor Madison.
Thank you, Your Honor. In the last year or so, the Conservation Commission has been discussing the idea of hosting speaker series and guided hikes to help educate the public about our public lands, educate the public about natural resources, and to engage the public on how to be better stewards of our natural resources. Councilor Williams has had his invasive species polls, which have seen a pretty big turnout. I'm proposing an additional $500 to the Conservation Commission's budget to support further education and outreach events. Right now, the bulk of the Conservation Commission's budget, which is only $1,500, is used in membership in the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions and to support research and conservation projects in the Keene area, most notably water quality monitoring with the Ashwaylet River Local Advisory Committee. So I feel $500 is reasonable, respectful of the taxpayers, and I feel like it'll bring a big value back to the citizens of Keene in terms of education and outreach. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Councilor Williams?
Just to say that as the other counselor on the Conservation Commission, I wholeheartedly support this. And thank you for bringing it forward. The Conservation Commission does a lot of great outreach work, and there's a lot of people who are putting their volunteer effort into these kind of things, and so showing some support for the work they're doing and to help promote it is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll? This is on the amendment.
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Medicine?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Omerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And it is unanimous. Further amendments? Councilor Bosley.
So I had co-authored a letter with Councilor Williams to amend the budget for the Keene Housing Kids Club and by $5,000 increased, and the Good Samaritans to increase their budget by $500.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Bosley, a second by Councilor Filio. Councilor Bosley.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I just want to address both of these organizations separately. I introduced this letter with Councilor Williams because I've spent the last 20 years in social work in regards to the Keene Housing Kids Club. That has shown me that kids are where we can really affect change in our community. I've personally seen generational homelessness, and we have an opportunity with a program like this to potentially create an environment to change a child's future. This group is only limited by their resources. They've done an incredible job advocating and fundraising and have expanded their reach and have plans to do more as resources become available for them. They're working on grant funding to help with transportation services. They have a plan to provide transportation to kids who have transportation as an obstacle via a taxi service. As a parent, I know how important involvement in activities are for our children, for their self-esteem, their sense of community. I would urge you to really support this amendment. We all have experiences in our life where an adult who is not a parent have touched us in some way. And these are kids that, I saw that. These are kids who don't necessarily have the opportunity to have access to some of these mentors and teachers and coaches in our community, and to get an opportunity to put one of these kids on a path where there's an adult who believes in them, who opens a door for them that they didn't know was even available, I think is invaluable, and $5,000 is worth changing one kid's life. As far as the Good Samaritans are concerned, this is another one that really struck a chord with me. They came before us asking basically to be level funded, and we're talking about $500. We are probably in one of the biggest mental health crises, and I recognize that there are resources that are coming available maybe down the pike as far as suicide, a suicide hotline or a number that people can call. But it's not in place now, and we don't know how it's going to work, and we don't know what the accessibility is going to be, and we have a proven group of people who have spent their time in our community doing awareness and being supportive and being there, and I don't think this is the time to not stand behind this organization. Thank you.
Any discussion? Counselor Jones, and then, well, do you mind if I let Counselor Williams go first, just because he co-authored
Exactly.
the letter?
Thank you. I just want to say how impressed I am with these two organizations. The Keene Kids Collaborative really has a very innovative model that hasn't been seen in a lot of places, and let's give them room to grow, room to run, and room to help really some of the most vulnerable children in our community with what they're doing, the programs that they're supporting. The Good Samaritans, we've seen the great work that they've done with the bike riders across the country. That was really bringing great attention to the cause. This is a very difficult time for a lot of people in terms of mental health coming out of COVID-19. There's a lot of stress, especially at schools. This is a very important time to be funding suicide awareness, and it's so important because suicide is really something that touches a lot of people's lives, and touches lives of lives. I'm sure we all know people who've we known who've been lost to suicide, and the effect that it has on those around them is also very tragic. And so if we can work to help prevent that, for $500, I definitely think we should. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Jones?
Thank you, Your Honor. As you know, for many years now, we've been speaking about what the purposes of funding outside agencies, and many of these, we don't meet the original purpose of funding outside agencies. When we had our fiscal policy workshop, I again brought it up that we don't have guidelines. So once again, here we are putting our hands in people's pockets to pay for a charity that's a favorite of city councilors instead of having guidelines. And I do want to support one of these, so I would ask if we could split the amendment, please.
So to split the question, we'll have to vote on it. It's not debatable. It requires a second. Is there a second to split the question? All right. So we have a motion to split the question by Counselor Jones, seconded by Counselor Workman. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll? And this is to split the question, so to divide it into two votes.
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
No.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
No.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
No.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
No.
And Counselor Powers?
Yes.
So we got 11 in favor, 10 in favor, 4 opposed, so the question is split. So we've got the first one on the table, which would be the plus $5,000 for KHKC. Any discussion on that one? Oh, Counselor Ormerod.
Thank you, Mayor Hansel. This is one I needed to do a little bit of research on to really understand on the Kids Collaborative. And that's the one in question, correct?
That's correct.
Yes. So what I looked at what they did, I want to explain to my fellow counselors why it's so unique. They make the community programs for youth more accessible than they would be otherwise. And they actually, if you think about a case management, let's say you need some help with navigating the medical system, or navigating another system for education, or getting the help that you need for your parents or your kids. They, in essence, reach out, provide awareness, and perform this type of case management for stressed out parents who normally would be in good shape, but for one reason or another are not able to put it together, may not even know that it's available. They may be operating in survival mode, and many of them are on the wrong end of the techno divide. A lot of the grant applications and everything are very easy online, but if you don't have access to that, that's one thing that the Kids Collaborative does. They provide funds for the kids, so they actually pay for many of the community programs. And they'll walk through the grant and funding and help people who would have otherwise not be able to know where to get the funding with the application process. The second thing is, you might have seen the note that came in about the increasing and saying that there's bringing $100,000 in cash into the community for these programs. And so, that's the money side, but I want to point out that there's the integrative and reintegrative for the youth. For them they can get counseling, but for them to integrate and make connections in their community, in their neighborhood with other peers, some of whom are like them, that's really important for all the programs that we're doing. There's also actually a prevention of juvenile delinquency and reducing recidivism, which I recall we kind of celebrate it anytime we're a chance to do that. And that's what this does. It reduces the need for also IAPs and other programs that are required in the schools. And that's a much better experience for the kids. Some still need their IAPs, but others, there are other behavioral and other problems that can be mitigated and prevented by this type of community integration. And by the way, that's also a savings to taxpayers, because you've got about 30% of the school budget related to special needs services that we're all paying for in one way or another. So I see these as all in line with the city goals, both in terms of serving the needs, looking for ways to especially help the youth, and saving cost in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Workman.
Thank you, Your Honor. As many of you know, I am a social worker myself, have been for many years, 20 years now. I really support the most vulnerable people in our society. I have been one of those most vulnerable people in our society as a child. I respect the work that the Kids Collaborative does, but one of the things that I struggle most with this request is that they are limited to the low-income children that they serve in our community. They serve folks that are in subsidized housing or receive subsidized housing choice vouchers. They also service folks outside of Keene. My concern, and something I'm struggling with, is the program is great, but it's not serving all low-income, vulnerable children in Keene. And these are taxpayer dollars that should be serving all low-income children, regardless of do they qualify for subsidized housing. Because I know many, many families who are on the fringe that don't qualify for subsidized housing that don't benefit from this program. So, something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Roberts.
Thank you, Your Honor. I completely agree with councilperson. Yeah, gotta make sure I get all my fellow council. Yes, being on the school board and seeing how it has benefited. But this is where you get a little kind of technical. I'll just put my social science hat on. We have children who are lucky enough to be able to get into subsidized housing, who then get the additional benefit of being of this program. But if you get up in the morning and take a walk around Keene, and then you see some of the women with their children who have been couch surfing the night just so they could be someplace safe, who could benefit from this program even more, can't. They're not allowed. It is really, it's a really screwed up system where if you can become home secure, where you can be warm, and you can go in because you're in subsidized housing and get reduced or free lunch in this, those all continue on. But when we look at the unhoused or the ones that are really insecure housing, when we look at the number of children that we have that are homeless in the Keene School District is extremely high this year. This is where, again, that I have you don't want to punish one group of kids who that really benefit from it because another group of children that really, really need it and are often invisible can't benefit from this. So, as you can see, it's an emotional type thing, is because I'm going to support it this year, but really going forward, we got to take care of all the kids. Every child, it shouldn't be based on whether you live in a subsidized housing or you live in a street or you live in a car. You live in the car, you live in the street, you don't qualify. You live in subsidized housing, you're not going to freeze this winter, you do qualify. But I'm not going to support it going forward after this year unless we include all the children that need it in the city of Keene. Because I can't live with myself saying, well, I'm taking care of these. We'll keep making sure these people stay out blind, invisible. No, we got to bring all the children up front, and we got to give all the children the opportunity, because you don't know how many you can save. You can't save them all, but you got to try to save as many as you can.
Thank you. Councilor Bosley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to address some of the concerns that Councilor Roberts brought up, because I've heard them, and I called Sally Millay, who is I think the board president for the Keene Housing Kids Club, and I asked her outright some of these questions because I wanted the answers as well. You know, the Keene Housing Kids Club was born out of, was a product of the Keene Housing Authority. Like, it was, I think it was originally funded through that group, which is how that original connection happened. But that board has worked tirelessly to increase its budget and raise money, and has, in the recent year, reached out past the Keene Housing Authority and moved into working with the children in SCS in their affordable housing units. So I asked, everyone here probably is aware that my husband is the Housing Stabilization Director for Southwestern Community Services. He manages all of the transitional housing, supportive housing, and homeless shelters in Cheshire County and Sullivan County for Southwestern Community Services. I spoke with Sally and said, you have made inroads with SCS. Will you consider reaching out to Craig and seeing what we can do for the folks who are in the transitional programs and in the homeless shelters? And her response was 100%, make the introduction. That's what we want to do. We want to get to all of these kids. I think that their ambition is only limited by the amount of funds that they can raise, and they can't get it all from us. But it's a group of people that are doing a good job trying to make their mission grow and reach more and more kids every year. And they're looking in the right places for these kids. And absolutely, Councilor Workman, I would love to see every kid whose parents are on a limited budget or a fixed income have access to this program. We need the community to wrap around it and really support it. It can't happen through the city government, but I think standing behind it this year is going to go a long way in getting the word out for them, and hopefully that happens in the future.
Thank you. Councilor Filio's been waiting a while.
Thank you, Your Honor. First thing I'm going to say is, I'll be supporting the recommendations tonight. It's not going to make much of a dent on the tax rate. It's very minuscule compared to what we're putting through tonight. It is important. But I want to just remind the council that Councilor Jones will remember, going back a ways, council meetings used to go till midnight on budget adoption night, and it all came down to the nonprofit agencies. That's why many moons ago, then Mayor Lynch actually appointed me to chair a committee to look at outside agencies. And we set up a criteria, which most of it is still now used by city staff, to determine how the funding takes place, because it's emotional, okay? If you go to page 35, there's 17 agencies that requested money this year. I could stand here for an hour on each one and tell you why every one of these is important. None of it would be a lie. None of it would be over-exaggerated. You could take every one of these and say why they should get 500 more, 1,000 more, 10,000 more. You could justify it. You really could. I mean, you're talking about, in the old arguments, where some of the council meetings went long because somebody just stand in here and say, oh my God, how can you not give more money to the community kitchen? People are starving. The elderly, you're not supporting the senior center, you're not going to support children. What's the matter with this council? And it would go to midnight. And that's why we set up a criteria that we could set something reasonable that every agency had to follow. So it wouldn't come into budget adoption night and here we go. The reason I'm saying it is because we're going back to that. And I can see that every year it's reversing back to where it was. Not because we don't care, it's because we so much care. But we still have to have reasonable, calm, non-emotional action take place to come up with these budgets. Because once again, if we wanted to, we could go way past midnight tonight arguing these. There's a couple on here that I would, but that's why we have the criteria. That's why we give it to the city manager. That's why we have staff actually sit down and do this. And yes, it sounds cold, but once again, you'll go all night long if you talk with emotion. So I am going to go, I am a little long-winded, but I am going to go with the motions tonight. They're reasonable, but I can make 20 more reasonable requests tonight too. So, let's let them go through tonight, but once again, let's take a look at this criteria, maybe talk about it with the mayor and city staff this year, maybe tweak it a little bit. So next year, maybe when we come into this, we're not all standing up trying to make amendments, that we go back to a based criteria, the city manager and the staff can explain how they came to those numbers, and we stick with it. Thank you.
Thank you. City manager?
So I just wanted to offer a couple of clarifications. We do have a committee in place that involves two city councilors that review these applications, and they're all scored, and they all are based on criteria that's preset. The second clarification I wanted to offer was the City of Keene Recreation Department has lots of programs, and we do have scholarships for any resident of the City of Keene, regardless of what housing development you might live in, to be able to get a scholarship to be able to participate in the programs. Now, that doesn't cover all of the programs that the Keene Collaborative provides, but we do have that in place, and we've had that in place for quite some time.
All right, thank you. Councilor Giacomo?
Thank you, Your Honor. And thank you, Councilor Filio, for really laying out some excellent points here. I completely agree with what he's saying, and I every one of these could be fought either way. The one criteria that I consistently, I haven't been here that many years, but every year when these come forward, they serve other towns. Any organization that is serving a multitude of towns in our region should be reaching out to every single one of the towns that they serve. Every year. If they're reaching out to Keene, every single town should be reached out to. And I don't know whether or not they do. Oftentimes that information is not really, they aren't generally forthcoming with it. And a couple of the organizations that are requesting more money this year specifically cater to regional or at least multiple other towns. Keene Housing Kids Collaborative, great organization, they serve Swansea. I hope Swansea is also providing some money for them. Not going to vote against these things, but I do want to make sure that, going forward, this is something that we really need to start paying more attention to. Is Keene the cash cow that is continually getting milked for money when these other regional, other towns in Cheshire County and in the region are not necessarily, even though they're getting the benefits of the services that Keene is helping pay for. So it's my only comment.
Thank you. Councilor Madison?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just echo Councilor Giacomo's comments. I, too, have found myself concerned that many nonprofits are not approaching other towns which they serve for funding. In fact, before tonight's meeting, I actually did a little bit of research to see how much other towns were giving outside agencies. And there are some towns, such as Chesterfield, that give more per capita than Keene does. But then there's other towns, such as Dublin, which give zero to outside agencies. And it's disappointing to see some of our neighboring towns not support charities that support individuals in their own towns. And it's disappointing when I see nonprofits not approach other communities that they also serve for funding. I think Keene has only asked that they try. We're not asking that they have a 100% success rate with every other town. I mean, we have some towns that won't even give their own fire departments a roof over their head. But we're just asking them to try, to put in the effort, and it's been really disappointing and frustrating over the last year to see some towns either just adamantly refuse to fund local nonprofits, and for some local nonprofits to just adamantly refuse to ask their own communities to support them. All that being said, in my letter to the council, I also proposed the same motion proposed by Councilors Bosley and Councilors Williams. So I wholeheartedly support this, and I wholeheartedly support their other proposal. But I also see Councilor Workman's concerns, and I certainly see Councilor Giacomo and Councilor Filio's concerns. So perhaps moving forward into the next budget cycle, it is something we need to take a closer look at.
Okay, we get Councilor Ormerod.
Thank you, Mayor Hansel. Perhaps it is time to review the criteria because we're not living in the world we lived in 5 years ago or thereabouts. And I really like the work of aligning and clarifying the city goals and looking for alignment for that. But for a piece of just kind of cold logic here, that I'm gonna put this to my fellow councilors. So we have, with the Kids Collaborative, we have an organization that actually expanded their reach and expanded their coverage. And so I just didn't understand the recognition or the recommendation for a organization that expanded their coverage, and then the initial recommendation was to reduce the amount of funding. That logic didn't make sense to me. So I'm supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, are we getting ready to vote on the amendment to add $5,000 to the Keene Housing Kids Collaborative line? Looks like. All right, ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
No.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne.
Yes.
Counselor Workman.
A reluctant yes.
Counselor Bosley.
Yes.
Counselor Powers.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
One no.
Got one opposed, so the amendment carries. Brings us to the second part of the amendment, the plus $500 for the Samaritans. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake.
Yes.
Counselor Remy.
Yes.
Counselor Johnson.
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo.
Yes.
Counselor Filio. Counselor Williams.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Madison.
Yes.
Counselor Roberts.
Yes.
Counselor Omorad.
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne.
Yes.
Counselor Workman.
Yes.
Counselor Bosley.
Yes.
Counselor Powers.
Yes.
That is unanimous. So those amendments are all included in the main motion to adopt the resolution as amended. Any discussion? Seeing none, Counselor Johnson.
Thank you. I hope I'm doing this in the right place, the right time. But I just want to applaud the committee that puts all this together. I know that getting the budget is very challenging, and you people have worked very hard on it, and I'm glad I don't have to deal with the numbers. You can give me 150 kids and I'll do great, but I just really appreciate the hard work that you folks have done. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, and I think you speak for a lot of us with that. Thanks. So appreciate that. Ready for a vote?
On.
Counselor
I'm
Jones.
sorry.
This is on the main motion.
Your Honor, are we going to hear the final numbers of the amendments?
New numbers.
We're working on it. All right. What are the new numbers, Finance Director?
Alrighty, with the changes that were made to FOP, and this evening, the total increase in the budget is $21,000. And the city's tax rate has gone from the original to $12.38. And originally, we were at $12.30, I believe.
Not from the change.
No.
You're talking about.
No, so the change itself for this evening was no tax impact for the $6,000.
Right. Everybody okay with that? Need any clarifications? Counselor Jones?
So we're still at .49. The final number is still the same, and the taxable number is still the same.
Yes.
Sorry. Numbers are changing. Okay, so this number actually is a 6. It's 6,006. Only increased by 6,065. Oh, 638. Yeah, the other number. And then, let's see, so 61681.
Stand by.
And that's the only number changed. Yeah. So, okay. So protocols, I just read this. This is a B. Okay.
That sounds good.
So with these amendments, we have Resolution R 2022-09B, a resolution relating to the 2022-2023 fiscal year budget, resolved by the City Council of the City of Keene as follows: that the sum of $26,772,681 be raised by taxation during the current year, which together with $38,227,487 for estimated operating revenues, aggregating $65,006,168 is hereby appropriated for the use of the several departments of the city government, and that the sum of $6,959,868 be appropriated for capital expenditures, and capital reserve appropriations, and the proprietary funds funded by the use of capital reserves, fund balances, and current revenues for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2022.
Okay. Any further clarification needed? Counselor
Just
Filio.
one quick comment as I remind the council that if the state of New Hampshire had sent us the money they owe us by law, it would have been $11 million. Our tax rate would have gone down significantly this year. Once again, hold the state's feet to the fire because they're violating the law at our taxpayers' expense. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And that is unanimous, and the budget is adopted. Which brings us, we'll take the item that we had laying on the table, from the table.
Yep.
And that was an ordinance for a second reading. I think it was, what, J2?
Yes, J2 should be before you, is a Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to class allocation and salary schedules. Committee is recommending adoption, and it is contained in Ordinance O 2022-05, an ordinance relating to class allocations and salary schedules.
Thank you. We're looking at Counselor Powers for a motion. Counselor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would move for the adoption of ordinance 2022-05.
Second.
A motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
This is the section of the city code that has to deal with the salary plan for those non-union employees in the city. It's a group of folks that are in that classification plan. And this will provide a 2% increase to that salary plan over the course of the next fiscal year. It also includes about 4 different reclassifications of positions. The positions being reclassified doesn't necessarily mean that the position is filled at the present time, but as they analyze the classification plan and the duties, you always try to tweak it from time to time to keep it rated to attract personnel. So Finance Committee looked at this, discussed it with the manager and assistant manager, and we were happy to pass this unanimously, and I hope the City Council will do the same.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
It is unanimous. Which brings us to resolutions, and we have a bunch of resolutions we'll have to take separately. But will the clerk please read number 1?
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to 5 bond resolutions before you this evening. They are recommending the adoption of each one. We do need to take them singularly with a roll call vote and a 2/3 majority. So we start off with Resolution R 2022-10, a resolution relating to the appropriation of funds for municipal building roofs.
I'm looking for a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Move for the adoption of Resolution 2022-10.
Second.
And we have a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
So for each of these that follow, it's the same situation. These are bond authorizations. This allows the city manager and the finance director to work through the program of funding all the programs that are being approved. This process will take place sometime over the next year. It's convenient for what else is going on and what's the right time to do this, but gives them the authority to do it. In each case, I won't read that every single time. And that's why the committee has seen this a couple of weeks ago, and it got put on the table. Got to have a budget first before you're going to go try to find some money for it. Recommend it be approved, each and every one of them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote on R 2022-10? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley? Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And that's unanimous. And I'm looking at Counselor Powers for a motion on R 2022-11, please, with a second by Counselor Remy.
Move for the adoption of Resolution 2022-11.
Second.
We have a motion by Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And that one's unanimous. Another motion, please, from Counselor Powers, second by Counselor Remy on R-2022-12.
Move for the adoption of Resolution 2022-12.
Second.
We have a motion by Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio? Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Omar?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And that one is unanimous. Another motion, please, from Counselor Powers with a second by Counselor Remy on R-2022-14.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move for the adoption of Resolution 2022-14.
Second.
And we have a motion by Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio? Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones? Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Omar?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And that one is unanimous. Finally, would I get a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy on R-2022-15?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move for the adoption of Resolution 2022-15.
Second.
And we have motion by Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Omar?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And that is unanimous, which brings us to our final item for the evening, resolutions number 2.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to Resolution R 2022-22A. It is a resolution relating to authorization to apply for federal and state grants and loans for water and wastewater projects and designation of authorized representatives. I'm sorry, the committee recommendation is to rescind this resolution, which I just read, which is from 2009, and in its place adopt a R22 version of the same type of document. But we have before us the resolution, the rescission of this 2009 resolution.
Thank
Which I
you.
believe still needs to be by roll call? Yes.
Yep. Counselor Powers for a motion, please. Counselor Remy for a second.
Rescission.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would move for the rescission of Resolution 2009-08.
Second.
We have a motion by Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
And the reason we're doing this is we're doing it beforehand. Many times we get all these put together, go streaming forward and find out we forgot to take out the old language that's in there. So combine this project together. We'll talk about what the actual action is in the next motion. Thank you.
Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Second.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Omar?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And that is unanimous. We have another motion from Counselor Powers, and it's time for a second from Counselor Remy.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2022-22-A.
Second.
And we have a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
All right, this is basically some housekeeping work to keep the state of New Hampshire happy with all the languages and authorities that we have here and they're looking for up there. So we've updated the information. It continues as the city manager being delegated the authority to apply for these funds, work through these programs, and it takes away the old language that we had, and the new language meets all the legal requirements of our staff. We voted on this unanimously at FOP. We hope you do the same. Thank you.
Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Omar?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And that is unanimous. I want to thank you all for your work. Thank you for your time and attention. We stand adjourned.